Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. In the last episode, I got exhausted seeing how busy the Queen Mother was always going to her patronages, and the calendar of events stayed about the same, and she was also determined to be with her family. And she spent holidays with them, and she also loved being with her grandchildren, especially Prince Charles. The 1960s were also a time when the Queen would lose people she was close to. That wasn't easy, but her daughter always made sure that she was cherished and looked after. So let's see what's happening today. Queen Elizabeth's old friend D'Arcy wasn't doing very well. He continued living in Rome and worked on behalf of street children in the city. Early in 1962, Osborne told the Queen Mother that he had had a hard winter, and she sent him her sympathy. Osborne felt well enough to come stay with her at Birkhall that autumn. She was worried about his finances, which had always been a problem for him, and she did something about it. A few months later, she told him, D'Arcy, "One or two of your old and loving friends have sent you a small sum to your banking account in Rome, in case it might come in handy sometime. They hope you don't mind. It is just to show their true affection." He replied at once, "Madam, dear madam, how kind." Her generosity would, he wrote, enable him to take taxis when tired, and would give him an invaluable benefit of peace of mind and freedom from fussing over small, ignoble matters. In 1963, D'Arcy Osborne became the Duke of Leeds on the death of his distant cousin, the 11th Duke, brother of Queen Elizabeth's sister-in-law, Dorothy. It was too late for him to enjoy this. He died in Rome in April 1964. One of his friends wrote to the Queen Mother that they had held a goodbye ceremony around his bed, and his ashes were buried with emotion on a golden Roman spring day in the English cemetery. The Queen then lost her girlhood governess and friend, Beryl Poignand, who died in early 1963. Queen Elizabeth, knowing she wasn't well, helped arrange for her admission first into the London Homeopathic Hospital and then into the Parkfield Nursing Home in Kingston, run by the Friends of the Poor and Gentlefolks' Help, of which he was a patron. In December 1964, Queen Elizabeth visited her, and it was the last time she saw the woman to whom she had been so close when they were both young. A month later, Beryl fell and broke her hip, and she died after a few days, aged 77. The Queen Mother wrote to Mrs. Leon Pogland Hall, Beryl's cousin, "She shared our joys and sorrows to the full, and I have nothing but happy and loving thoughts in my mind when I think of her." All the deaths reminded her how curiously alone she had become, even in the 1960s. "Nearly all my family have gone, and so many old friends, and sometimes one feels very solitary. But I suppose that happens to everyone who lives past 60, and one must not allow the fact to depress one." In an upbeat moment, she said that there are compensations, such as loathing the idea of going to nightclubs and things like that. In 1969, the Queen Mother, with most of the royal family, attended the dedication of King George VI's Memorial Chapel and St. George's Chapel, Windsor, as the last resting place of her husband. His coffin had remained in the royal vault beneath St. George's since his death. It had originally been intended that a tomb should be made for him in St. George's Chapel itself, like those of his parents and grandparents. It was suggested that various sculptures make an effigy of the king to be placed on the tomb. After going through a few sculptures, it was decided, at the end of it all, that rather than a tomb with effigies, a chantry chapel should be built for the king, opening off the north aisle of St. George's. There were a few delays, but the architect succeeded in creating a simple and harmonious building, lit by narrow lancet windows with stained glass designed by John Piper. Queen Elizabeth was pleased with the result, which she described as truly peaceful and a holy place. Queen Elizabeth's primary home for the second half of her life, and her primary home then, was Clarence House. She wasn't excited to move there when her husband died, but gradually she grew to accept it as an effective London base. She had help with her family and friends to decorate it and give the house a sense of stability. Throughout the decades, Queen Elizabeth's household and staff remained as constant as her kindness. She didn't like change, and her power of persuasion could ensure people stayed. As with Arthur Penn, she would never willingly let go of anyone she valued. No one in her staff seemed to have been in any hurry to leave. Her private secretary was Sir Martin Gillett. Gillett would see to her every morning at 10:30 with mail and any official papers she had been sent. Gilead was a great joy at any party and was always able to break the ice because people could get nervous around the Queen Mother. Another employer was the treasurer. After Sir Arthur Penn died, the job was held for many years by Sir Ralph Anstruther. His job was to try and impose order, if not limits, on the Queen's spending. He was a stickler for proper dress, particularly among the equerries when they arrived to work at Clarence House. He insisted on high polished black lace of shoes. He thought shoes without laces were bedroom slippers. And detachable starched white collars at all times in London, and he himself never traveled anywhere without at least one black tie and bowler hat in case he had to attend a funeral. He did not speak of the tube, but of the underground tubular railway, and preferred wireless sets to radios. The Queen Mother's private secretary was Alistair Ard, another ex-army officer. He joined her household as equerry in 1960, took on the role of comptroller in 1974, and became the linchpin of her household, in charge of her homes and their contents, her staff, and entertaining. In close support from 1959 was her press secretary, John Griffin, a former officer of the 24th Lancers, and then of the Queen's Bays, who had fitted well into the easygoing household. He was a man of few words. He felt that it meant he was doing his job. Like others, he stayed in Queen Elizabeth's service until he had a debilitating stroke in 1990, after which she used to invite him and his wife, Henrietta, to come as guests to Scotland. Her senior household were all devoted to Queen Elizabeth, but they were aware that her style of living, as the last great Edwardian, could be criticized in the times of the end of the 20th century, when the thinking was all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. Ralph Anstruther, in particular, had to be concerned about the size of her entourage, as well as the cost of her clothes, her horses, her entertaining at home. No easy matter when she liked everything to be the best. And she could throw some great parties. She said to Princess Margaret about one reception she gave, "I gave a cocktail party for 200 bishops from overseas. By the time that 8 o'clock came, they were in cracking form. They tucked into all the canopies, tossed down martini after martini, especially the Americans, who I am sure had been entertained on warm sherry for weeks before." She frequently gave lunch and dinner parties, usually for 12 people. Guests always loved these invitations. The food was good, the cocktails were mixed, and the wine was poured with generous aplomb by her uniformed stewards, and the atmosphere was merry. On fine summer days, lunch was often served at a table under the trees in the garden. Ray Strong said, "The Clarence House ritual is that of an Edwardian great house, and the sight of 18 people sitting at a dining room table laid over all al fresco with 3 manservants ministering to their needs was pure 1890s. Lady Gladwin, wife of the former ambassador in Paris, remembered a night at the opera. She and other guests gathered to wait rather formally at Clarence House for their hostess. Suddenly there seemed to be a movement in the air, a widening of our circle, a rustle of skirts, and in came, with the greatest informality and the highest of spirits, the Queen Mother. Sparkling with diamonds and pink tulle crinoline, and breaking any ice there might have been, she exuded an excited joy that was almost unqueenly. Lady Gladwin was fascinated. Such is her power to charm and dazzle, that it does not seem to matter one whit that her inherent stoutness is now completely out of control. Other people worried about the weight for reasons of health and vanity, not her. Obviously she relishes her food, her sweets, and her champagne, and is not going to spoil her enjoyment of life by bothering about diet and exercise. Cynthia Gladwin was not sure how much the Queen Mother enjoyed Figaro. She sat straight as a ramrod and completely still. I thought from where I sat that I could detect a little weariness, a little sadness in her profile. But in parentheses, it was noted, in fact, ramrod straight was how Queen Elizabeth always sat. She had been brought up to believe that a lady's back should never touch the back of her chair. Lady Gladwin said that as soon as there was a chance to applaud and comment, Queen Elizabeth's gaiety returned, and she encouraged everyone to clap as loudly as they could and to shout, "Encore!" Frances Campbell Preston later recalled that when she started to work as one of the women of the bedchamber, ladies-in-waiting and daily attendants for Queen Elizabeth in the 1960s, I stepped back into a world which had died for me in 1939, a world of butlers, chefs, housekeepers, housemaids, pages and footmen in smart uniforms, kitchen maids, chauffeurs, and gardeners. She carried out her duty with wit and brio and became one of Queen Elizabeth's longest-serving ladies-in-waiting. Another was Lady Grimthorpe, who was appointed in 1973 and later became the senior lady in the household. In the 1990s, she took over the duties of Mistress of the Robes, attending Queen Elizabeth at important engagements and arranging the rota of ladies-in-waiting after the death of the Duchess of Abercorn, who had held the post since 1964. The ladies lived with Queen Elizabeth for 2 weeks at a time, and one of their principal tasks, as we have seen, was to deal with the thousands of letters, often requests for help, which she received every year. There were social as well as secretarial duties. Dame Frances Campbell Preston. The job was very nebulous. There are no rules. You did have to answer letters, help plan her engagements, chat up her guests, but no one told you what to do. You did as you liked. She didn't want stereotypes. She wanted to gossip with you. She was huge fun, but you never got very intimate with her. There was always a line. This was perhaps because of her nervousness about the danger of being quoted or misquoted in the press, and she hated being asked questions, said Dame Frances. If you ask her how she liked Churchill, it would get a blank wall. It would be a blank wall. She was very guarded and didn't want to be caught out. Many other members of the royal family share that concern. So I will end the video here, and in this episode we see the Queen's personality through the way she staffed her household, the way she wanted to handle her finances. I love the former ambassador to Paris's wife, who gave her description of how she found the Queen, and she was in the mindset that she should have all the things that made her her queen. It was the only life she'd ever known, so I can't blame her there. I will be a bit sad when the book ends, and the ending's coming up pretty soon. I know it's been a while since I started the book, but the Queen lived to be over 100, so she had a lot of life to discover, and I've enjoyed learning about this remarkable lady and could see how she and King George VI raised a remarkable daughter in Queen Elizabeth II. She had great role models to learn by. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned before, I created a list of merchandise from Amazon that I felt you might be interested in, and if you click on the link, it takes you to the Amazon page, and if you purchase anything, I get a small commission that is of no extra cost to you. But more importantly, I wish everybody a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you.